While many dentists get out of dental school and jump right into work, others end up years into a practice and feel like they're chained to their chair or spinning their wheels. At Duckett Ladd, we've discovered that there are 6 phases of long-term practice success. On this podcast, we'll explore each phase of success and help you on your growth journey.
Hey everybody, welcome back to another episode of the Dental Momentum Podcast, powered by Duckett Ladd Dental CPAs and Advisors. Jared Duckett back at you with another episode to help you get better. And guys, still on this practice transition series. Had everybody on here, right? If you haven't heard it, listen to it again, or maybe it's coming out later, but we've had attorneys, we've had brokers, we've had industry experts, we've had doctors, and today got another good friend and an awesome doctor, Dr. Jim Block, on here to talk about his transition. So Jim, how you doing, buddy?
Doing great, Jared. Thanks for having me on.
For sure, man.
Happy to help out.
Yeah, this is going to be fun. And you know, we've got 2 of these episodes with doctors, right? You're one of them. And both doctors have had a transition, right? Recent, I'll say, transition. So it's kind of like where the market's at today and that sort of thing, even though the market changes fast. But the other doctor, Dr. Jim Rocker, right? He was sold to a DSO. Your transition was not to a DSO, it was to another doctor. And all the transitions are different, right? So I really want to unpack that and what you went through, how it worked, so that people listening out there thinking, well, the DSO sale is not the only option. There, of course, there's a lot of doctor-to-doctor transitions. How does it work and what you went through to get specifics on it? So if it's cool with you, Jim, what I'd like you to do is just kind of intro yourself a bit. And then I want you to tell your story. I have everybody tell your story from going back to dental school, building the practice to where it was right before you sold it. And then we'll geek out on the transition.
That's great. So I had a general practice here for 30 years in Fremont, California. And going back, I graduated from dental school in 1988 from USC. And when I was looking to, figure out where we wanted to settle down, I talked to the dentist that had bought, so stick with me for a second, had bought my dad's practice in 1979.
Okay.
He was a UOP grad from San Francisco, great guy. And so my dad couldn't really hold on long enough for me. I didn't really know exactly what I wanted to do. Was it medicine, dentistry? I wasn't sure. So
you're not a first generation dentist. I mean, your father was a dentist.
My father and my grandfather both.
Third generation.
So my grandfather started out in San Diego, and then he moved north to Oakland, met my mom's dad. My dad's mom in Oakland. And so he practiced in Oakland for a number of years. And then when my dad started his practice, it was here in Fremont. My grandpa would take BART, which is a transportation down from Oakland, get off BART in his nice little hat and his overcoat and tie, and just looking at dressed to the nines. And so he would walk over to the office, and they practiced together for over 20 years. My grandpa practiced for over 60 years.
Holy cow. That might be the longest I've heard.
He loved it. And so anyway, make a long story short, so Dr. Mitchell had bought my dad's practice in 1979. And then when I was leaving dental school, I contacted him and thought, maybe I might want to associate with him and see what it's like just being back in my hometown. So that's what we ended up doing, my wife and I. And I practiced with Dr. Mitchell from, let's say, 1990, because I was in LA still teaching for a couple of years at the dental school. So I was back here in 1990. I practiced with him for about 4 to 5 years. And then he really realized that he just wasn't ready. We're in kind of a smaller office, so to speak. We sort of staggered our hours a little bit. Okay. He really wasn't ready to sell his practice. So he owned the space we were in, all condominium arrangements. So he said, look, why don't you stay here, continue building your practice. I'm going to move to a different part of Fremont where they, building some new office buildings. And so that's what I did. So I stayed in this complex, built really the practice myself. But the catch
real fast there, if you don't mind. So he moved to another location. You stayed in the existing. Did you keep the patients, or did he take the patients?
The patients that I had, that I was working with up to the time, I kept. Okay. The most of the patients that were with my dad all those years went with him.
Yeah.
but here's where it comes full circle. So a few years later, he decides to sell his practice. And it was a very kind of an uncomfortable situation because all these patients started calling the office. We would like to come over to see you. I felt really awkward about it. So I ended up calling the dentist that had purchased his practice and just told her, look, we're not soliciting any of these patients. Matter of fact, they're coming too fast and furious for me to even handle. So she understood, and she just was building a different type of practice in a way. And I think that people just end up where they want to be. That's just what it comes down to. And
Sure.
so I ended up seeing a lot of people that I knew knew me as a little kid, basically. So it was an interesting time. But so yeah, a lot of those patients came over, but a lot didn't. Some stayed with her, and that was really what I would have probably preferred. But like I said, I think people end up going where they're comfortable, and it all seems to work out.
So your practice was kind of a startup, really, because you never really purchased a practice. You just jumped in with Dr. Mitchell, and jumped over, and you started growing what you had.
It was. And in the beginning, I can tell you that I had my feet up on the table a few times, drinking coffee, waiting for patients. And, the same old thing. I had my front office staff at the time. Somebody would call in and say, hey, can I get in tomorrow for whatever? And they would say, you know what, we're kind of booked for the next 2 weeks, but we can maybe fit you in 3 weeks. And we weren't really booked in 2 weeks, but it just it made everything kind of move along a little quicker.
So was that back in, I think I got these dates right, 1995, give or take?
Yeah, but there was running water then, about 95.
95. Okay, so we're basically 521, let's say 26 years ago, give or take, right?
Yeah.
Somewhere in there.
Right.
Okay, perfect. So you built that practice from roughly, what were your collections, if you don't mind me asking, back in 95? And that's a long time ago, but
it's funny.
What I want to do is get from like where you started to where you built it to.
It's funny that you say that, because every time I see my accountant, who's like a very old time friend,
right,
he's like, dude, anytime you complain about anything, I go, I want to remind you what your collections were back in whatever, right? So I don't know. I mean, honestly, to thinking about it, 100 grand. I mean, I really don't know. Honestly, I don't know. I just know that slowly over time, without doing a lot of marketing, just treating the patients right, that's what built our practice, in my opinion.
So you did you stay in that same location from 95 till, let's say, the beginning of this year?
Oh, perfect. So I was in that space, in that building until 2003. Okay. And then I purchased a suite in that building that I've loved. It's been a great place. And we've been in there since 2003.
Yeah. So you bought that real estate and held on to it.
Right.
Yeah. And we'll go through that on this.
Yeah, it was in the same condominium complex, and really the move was pretty easy. I remember this is right before digital with the panoramic x-rays. We had this old panoramic machine all taken apart on a dolly and some other stuff, and we're just pushing it across the courtyard, going from one office to the other.
You didn't need a moving company, right? Just
no. We had our own. We might have had starving college students moving company come over too. I don't know. But yeah,
free beer and pizza, right?
Yeah, so it was good.
Oh, that's
awesome. Pretty easy. Yeah.
So walk me through. Okay, so that's where you started. Let's hit on when did you exit your practice? When did you sell your practice? And let's reverse kind of in there.
Okay, so the practice technically sold May 1st of this year.
May 1st of this year is the close date. Okay.
It was April, and then some things happened with the person who's buying. His dad passed away. They flew back to the Philippines, and so we just kind of re-signed everything. We didn't change the contract around. I talked to Larry on the phone. We just reinitialed and blah blah blah. So yeah, May 1st was the actual date.
So let's say May 1st, 2022 is when you closed.
Right.
Sold it. When did you start thinking about start with the end in mind? When did you start thinking about when did you first start thinking about selling your practice?
Well, let me make this a real short as well. I was laying just getting up in the morning, I guess, up in Tahoe, taking a little vacation or a place. And I'm not on Instagram, but my wife is. And she goes, hey, there's this thing, Dr. Phelps, it was on Instagram. So I looked at it real quick. I saw the book, it was, Your Net Worth, I forgot what the name of it was one of his really good
Yeah.
books.
Yeah.
I got it right away. I read it, scheduled a call with him. And that's the day that I said, I need to work towards being done.
Oh, so that started it, right?
Yeah.
So how long ago was that?
That was, I joined Freedom Founders in September of 2020.
Okay.
So it'll be not even quite 2 years yet. So I would say it was right about at that mark. So right, it probably was the summertime of 2020, because it was all after the initial lockdown and all that stuff. People were getting away and chilling a little bit and all that.
So this might be a silly question, but did COVID have a lot to do with that? Or do you think without COVID you would have held on longer?
I would say COVID didn't do anything in terms of speeding up the process. Okay. I mean, I think just dentistry in general, I don't want to get off on a tangent, but just to make this comment real quick, yeah. I feel like dentistry did an amazing job through COVID. All the stories, anybody I've talked to, it felt like we were running toward the virus and not running away from the virus, because, all these stories that I hear from my physician friends, stories from patients talking about their physicians, I think they were really, really afraid of this thing, and we're not seeing people. A lot of telemedicine. It became just kind of an easy way to do it. Well, dentistry, come on, how much teledentistry can you do?
Right.
So we literally here, I think it was like the 19th of March, I believe, right? When the shutdown was. Yeah. We went back June 1st.
Yep.
I don't think that was a long time. I mean, in theory, yeah, it was a long time, but to me, it felt like, okay, we're getting back about as soon as we can get back.
Yeah.
And we didn't look back, and it was great. So I don't think it sped up the decision, but I would have had it regardless of whether there was COVID or not. I think after I knew that there was a different way than the stock market, it really piqued my interest. And I mean, right now, and I do look forward to at some point here, face to face with David, just telling him what an amazing thing it's been for our family. So yeah,
that's awesome. So that plan B, I'm going to use some of Dr. David Phelps' words here a little bit. That plan B, once you realize there was a plan B and a different way to get to that plan B, that really started, hitting your radar of like, okay, there is another way. Let's look at a sale. So with that being the case, like what, let's get tactical here. What were you thinking about? Okay, now I need to start cleaning up my practice to get ready to sell, or your practice was good? It was more of, how can I find a buyer? Kind of walk me through that process.
Well, knowing what I know now, you'll cover that later, but, and meeting Dr. Abernathy a few times at some of the meetings.
Yeah.
I would have used that resource for sure.
Sure.
Because I really didn't optimize the practice, but I wanted out of dentistry. I mean, that call with Dr. Phelps was like, I would have sold my practice for $1 that day. So, I just really didn't have what it would take to probably stay long enough to really optimize it the way it should be optimized. Mm-hmm. Now, with that said, my wife and other front office personnel that have been with me for years, like almost no turnover in my dental office. I had one hygienist literally the entire time. She retired after COVID. So she was with me for 30 years.
Yeah.
So without my wife up front spearheading everything, wearing a lot of hats, I think we had the practice really buttoned down pretty well. I mean, and since what I've learned working with this new dentist as well, we'll talk about his story really quick. It's kind of interesting, but same thing. They say, gosh, we have all this fancy stuff. We're running all these reports, and you just collect. It's like you have a plan from when the patient comes in to when they leave. There's a definite plan. We can see it. I said, well, it's older fashioned. I mean, all my practice is all newest technology, but the way we get to all that is just treating people like you want to be treated years ago, probably. So Karen would have everything down written out in hand, but all written down. This is what you're having done today. This is what your insurance is going to pay. Here's your copayment. They pay the copayment. I mean, every time like that. Like she said, maybe she had 5 people that she extended some credit to because she just knew they really needed it.
Sounds like you married. Sounds like you married well.
I did. I married him. I married way up.
I've met your wife. I agree.
Yeah, it wasn't hard to do. Married up. But anyway, it just, you know what I mean? She just had it like dialed in pretty well in terms of that. And that's a very important piece of your practice.
Yeah.
So,
So going out and finding a buyer, let's just, I use dates a lot. Let's just say September, October 2020 is when you're like, okay, there's another way. Let's sell this practice and go to plan B. How did you go about finding the buyer? Did you use a broker? How'd that all come about?
perfect. Yeah. So I used a broker that I've known for a long time. And it's funny, we golfed together and stuff, but I don't remember where we met. I met him years ago. I thought maybe it was some dental meeting. And so I used him. We decided, of course, at the beginning not to put it on the market, and it never did go on the market. I didn't want a lot of people kicking tires and not being serious about it. So I kind of left it up to Steve to see what he could do. And he ended up talking to another person that he had known for a long time in my town as well, in Fremont, who's been in dentistry for about 20 years here. So not a new grad, been out for, quite a while, had bought a practice similar to mine, kind of this practice in this old Victorian style home in town. And so he was looking to acquire another practice, and he knew about my practice, but also knew the building, and really was interested in the long run of maybe purchasing the space.
Because you own the space.
I own the space.
Yeah.
And so, I thought, I got to meet this guy for sure. I mean, I meet everybody at that point. I'm not picky. I mean, I want to meet people. So we hit it off right away. I mean, it was just a really natural.
Now, how long had he been practicing?
So he practiced for 20 years here in town.
Okay.
And he has been practicing for 20 years here in town. And so, we got along really well, had a lot in common. And both wives met. We early on, we did that because she's involved in his practice. Yeah. Not in a different way than Karen is in mine. Karen is the face of the practice. Like, people walk in, that's who they see. They would be uncomfortable if they didn't see her, after all these years. Yeah. This other gal's phenomenal woman, comes from a financial background, but she's a little bit more kind of removed from it. Wants to put people up front that, are not family, which is a good thing to do. In hindsight, we can go through all of that, taking yourself out of the equation. But so we met and we got together a few times, talked, and then decided to start, getting a little bit more serious about this. The negotiations went on from, let's say, probably for about a year, truthfully. Yeah. About a year. And this was why, because the practice that he was in, he was leasing from the doctor that he bought this.
Now, how far away, like mileage wise?
Probably not far. I mean, this town's a pretty big town, but probably 10 miles maybe.
Yeah, it's pretty close.
Yeah. And so he could not get out of this lease, is what it turned out to be. So he still, to this day now, because we closed in May, he has this lease for another, I think, year and a half at this other spot. So he's treating his patients there, and he's also trying to get over to our office like a day, 2 days a week, start treating any emergencies that I may have to offload, because we really cut from COVID. We really trimmed a lot. I had one hygienist, one assistant, and we just cranked through it.
Okay.
And so it slowed the schedule down a little bit, but it was better at the state I was in terms of, just not enjoying it as much. So just not having to pop from chair to chair to chair, just kind of one column down, hygiene, one column. And I take that back. One day a week, we have two hygienists, but basically one. And we only work really 28 to 30 hours a week. Okay. So Monday, Tuesday, Thursday, all day, and then Wednesday, half a day. And that's been that schedule for a long time. So our numbers are all based on like 28 hours, really.
I got you. So through that negotiation process, you said maybe a year negotiation process. Was there a lot more negotiations outside this lease issue? Was it price? Was it, and was your broker handling most of it, or was it kind of coming to you and taking a lot of your time, or how'd that work?
Well, we ended up using Larry Pino, which I would suggest, great guy and super smart. And we still use, I mean, I need to get back in touch with him. We will use him for a long time. Just a great guy, as you know. So the actual getting down toward the end, Larry handled with their attorney. We always run kind of a Zoom call with everybody on it. A lot of this I found, and Larry even said to me, it just works that way. With some of the things, it was better just keeping the attorneys out of it. It was like we just sat down and talked about things. I can tell you price was an issue because, they were, I mean, in hindsight, I know that we sold it for a little bit less than what it was truly worth. The first part of this lease for the first year is lower than what I could lease the building out for sure.
Okay.
But to me, these things just all made sense to have this guy in there and taking over my practice, treating a lot of really close friends and family members and people that have been, with the practice for a long time. So I know there's a lot of people that would say, hey, you're selling your practice, get as much for it as you can. This is not the time to do that. I just didn't take that road because I just felt better doing what I did.
Yeah. Well, and I want to dive on that just a little deeper if we can, because, and in this series we're talking a lot about different types of sales, doctor, DSO, all that stuff.
Right.
And you're working with a broker and you said you didn't really want him to take it to market and people kick the tires and that sort of thing. Did you at the onset think, hey, I don't want to sell to a DSO? Did you ever consider a sale to a DSO, or
when I heard
your thoughts there?
Yeah, when I heard some of the multiples that some of these practices were going for maybe a few years back, because I think it really slowed down over the last few years here. I would be lying if I said that didn't sound great. But as we got into negotiating with this Dr. Hernandez, it just became something that I didn't want to do. I thought we just found somebody that I think is going to be, a good steward of everything that we've done in my practice for 30 years. And then really, when you look at some of these other patients, going back to with my dad and my grandpa, and there are definitely patients in my office that saw both of them.
That is so cool.
So it's really weird. Yeah. But that's that's just it. And I just, being very transparent about it, I just wanted the right person in there. So
yeah, that's awesome. Walk me through a little bit, the transaction, if you will. I mean, this doctor came in and bought 100% of your practice, because we've talked about in other deals, like, different structures where they can come in and buy a portion, and there's all different ways to skin a cat, but
he did.
How did he come in to buy 100%? Did you stay on?
He bought 100% of the practice. Okay. I own the space. I'm working back with him for sure through the end of the year, with an option to continue for another year if I choose to do that.
Yeah.
And that's been great. And it's funny, after you sell it, I don't say that I'm looking at the dentistry any differently. I mean, I'm always in there doing the very best I can do all times, but there's a little bit of pressure taken off of you when you're not paying the bills and you're getting a W-2 and getting a paycheck. It was like, it's pretty nice to get a paycheck.
Yeah. That's what I was going to ask. How does it feel different now?
It's been, it's really been very positive. I don't have any of you got to look at each individual and be honest with yourself and look in the mirror. And I don't feel like with my practice, I have this ego thing. I just don't. It's like I'm enjoying seeing the people that that's why I go down there.
Yeah.
I go down there because, hey, I'm pumped up about, prep and 2T. I go down there because I enjoy seeing the patients and that I have a really close relationship with.
Yeah.
So that part's been great. And then just not having all the financial part kind of off my shoulders. That's huge.
Well, it's cool. You're still left with your real estate too.
Yes.
I mean, you kept that piece of real estate. You can do whatever you want with it down the road.
Yeah. And it's great. I mean, we're basically, northern Silicon Valley. So it's just, the valuations when it comes to all the real estate, it's pretty crazy. Even right now.
So this is kind of a unique transaction because of still the different locations, if that makes sense. You kind of retain your existing one, even though you sold it, you're working it and kind of running it, if you will. But what's the plan, if you don't mind me asking? Is it for the other doctor to merge them together?
Great
Or is that
question.
yet to be determined?
I get that question from my wife every day. What is the plan? Uh, there's just things got a little bit crazy because his mother passed away. His wife's father passed away before that, both from the Philippines. They've been here all their lives, but their folks were back in the Philippines.
Sure.
So it just kind of, they were gone for weeks at a time with these things. And so we haven't gotten off probably to the best start he would like. Our practice, we're still just doing this. We're just doing what we do. That was kind of
You probably haven't seen a difference. You're just.
No, I just say to him, look, we're just going to do what we do. And I think if you just let us do what we do, you'll make money owning this practice and not even stepping in it every day. Mm-hmm. So you can do whatever you want to do. I know that the thing he's having a hard time with right now is just because he has the lease at the other space. If he didn't have that, he probably would have just migrated everybody over. And our office space size.
Could you absorb it?
We could. It'd be a little, we'd have to get a little creative, but we could. And so now with this lease, he's just trying to stay kind of where he's at. I don't think any of his patients even know that they're going to be coming over to this office. We've had a few of his assistants work for us. For instance, when one of my assistants was out, we were able to do that, which was great. And so it's been really good in that area. But the plan moving forward is to, slowly migrate his patients over into our office. And then, he'll just take over the whole show.
Yeah. So you got an option to still stay on and do dentistry and not own the practice, and you got it made, right?
Well, I don't know. The responsibility level's still there. So that's always, you've always got a lot of exposure. But it's a good situation in that regard for sure.
Yeah. Anything, you would recommend. So let's say you got a dental practice owner out there right now that's thinking through this process. You're very recently gone through this. You closed literally 2.5 months ago, give or take. Any advice to them out there? Like, maybe you should look at this or think about this a little differently or blah, blah, blah. What do you think?
I think that I would look at all options. So definitely I probably would not have used a practice broker, maybe, so to speak.
Why so, if you don't mind me asking?
Because I feel like in this deal, as it went on, it was kind of like a real estate agent representing the buyer and the seller. And I don't know.
Kind of dual-sided brokers, maybe.
Yeah, I'm not sure what I would have done, but I would have definitely explored more avenues. I would have definitely used the absolute wisdom of somebody like Dr. Abernathy, who's, come on. It's amazing to be able to pick his brain. That I would have done more of that, but I just, like we said earlier, I just didn't really have it in me to do all that. I just wanted to get the wheels turning towards getting it sold and being done with it.
Yeah.
And that meant taking a little less and doing whatever, then I was fine with it. And Larry Pino and I had a number of talks about this, and he got it. He was like, I understand totally.
Let me ask this. Was there, in your specific transaction, if you don't mind me asking, was there an option for you maybe just to sell and walk away completely? Or was it always, no, I'm going to sell and I want to stay on and work a couple years? Well,
they wanted us to stay on.
Yeah.
Obviously, which was, I think a smart thing to do.
I agree.
And I don't think I ever would have just sold and walked away, because I just think it would have been like getting like 1,000 emails a day. And then the next day, goose egg. I don't know. It would have been kind of weird. I talking to my brother-in-law the other day, same thing about retiring. And that's what he said, because he was in sales. Oh, a ton of emails every day. Had a heart attack, decided to quit, because it went down to 0. And fortunately, he's got a lot of hobbies and has done great. But, I think I would always have wanted to stay on and work still. So
that's awesome. You got such a unique story. I think the grandfather, father, because if you will, you almost, you kind of stepped into the shoes of your father to a degree, with how that worked out, right?
Right. No, definitely. I think about him every day. There's pictures of him all over, and he was involved in so many different things, and politics and sports and was mayor of our city in 1970. And we have a collage in the waiting room that just is all these great pictures, and people that come in remember all these old time people that are in this collage. And it's kind of crazy. Yeah. I mean, I think about them all the time, every day.
Yeah.
Now, riddle me this. Why, though, after 4 kids and a ton of nieces and nephews, did we not have one person who wanted to go into dentistry?
None, huh?
Not one. Medicine, yes. Nobody in dentistry. So my wife said, well, think about it. If everybody didn't hear you complain so much about it, they probably would have gone into it.
That's hilarious.
I guess that's the reason. Now,
yeah. What was that? I'll get a little personal here. Was that ever your goal, to try to have someone else take over in the family?
You know what? Not really. I mean, you got to do what you want to do. I've been really good at, well, and the other thing I would say about both the practice and then also like with the kids, not a lot of micromanaging. I mean, I feel like all of our kids have turned out great. You know, they're big hearts. They treat people like you want to be treated. And so from a standpoint of that, plus my office, just surrounding myself with good people and letting them do their job. That to me is how it's worked so well. And I think that's proof of why we don't have a revolving door there.
Yeah.
But the real thought of having somebody come in from the family, no, I think it would have been great. If one of the kids chose dentistry, I've been happy as can be. But I mean, that's out of my control. And I try to every day still work on like controlling what I can control. Yeah. And realizing it's getting smaller and smaller every year that passes of what you really have control over, truly.
Yeah. Well, now that you got your plan B in place and you've got your, your practice sold and you're still working, and it's maybe a silly question. You think it's still going to be hard to put down that handpiece for the last time and just walk out of that door for the last time?
It might be, I'm sure there'll be a lot of emotions going on, in my mind and in my heart. But I'm ready. I'm ready. I just know that there'll be whatever feelings will be, they'll be. So I'll tell you afterwards.
Well, the cool thing is you've got your ducks in a row and your I's dotted and T's crossed. And that
I hope. I mean, that's the reason for that extra little option, because I want you and I are going to have a lot of work to do to kind of figure out exactly where we're at. But hey, that's great. I mean, I'm looking forward to all that. So
that's awesome. Yeah, you've got an awesome story, man. I appreciate you coming on and telling it. Again, it's you can see and we've said this through the series, that all practice transitions are different. You can tell in Jim's story. He sold to another doctor close, but they're still in different locations, but he has the real estate, which is a great benefit. And so it's just, and staying on, you see some doctor to doctor transitions where the doctor stays on for just a little bit and then goes away. And so they're all different. That's why it's just not cookie cutter. This is how you sell your practice. Yeah. Right. And it's just a whole lot of different options. But Jim, I appreciate you, man. Anybody out there listening too, I mean, if we'll put, is it cool if we put your contact info, Jim, if somebody might have a question too? Yeah,
absolutely. Yep.
I knew he'd say that. I know the kind of guy he is. So, and again, like I say, every time, SS, if you hear something here that you think one of your friends, colleagues, somebody would like and would benefit from, share this episode, subscribe to the podcast, leave a rating, give a review. Jim, this was awesome, man. I appreciate it. Appreciate you.
Thanks, man. Always good to see you too. And anything you need, always happy to help out.
I'll do it. All right. You guys out there listening, appreciate you. Have a great week. We'll talk to you guys soon. Take care.